This tutorial will show you how to set up the Canon C100 Mark II with cine primes, mattebox, follow focus and Atomos Ninja recorder. So when you use the prime lens setup, really you should be using the follow focus and the mattebox as well. And the way that we can attach that to the Canon is that we have to use this cage. It's called the black ultra cage, and we've got the rails that slide backwards and forwards, and this device here is completely built to fit the C100. So you've got your opening there for your control handle there. Now to put this on, it's a little bit tricky because we have got to engage this little bolt here into the bottom of the camera. It's a little bit of a juggling act. I would suggest that you always do it over a table and get a friend there. You know, it's always worth that for moral support, but also just in case to make sure that things go well. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my thumb on the bolt, that's pushing through, and then I'm going to push the camera in and I'm just going to line them up. The camera pretty much fits at the front. See, I've got that now. That is now lined up, and I'm just going to hold that, press that in, and then carefully with my great big screwdriver, I'm just going to gently tease that in like that. Got that there? Perfect. Okay, great, that's half the job. Now we need to put on the base plate so we can get it on the tripod. So again, we've got another 3/8 inch bolt here, the bigger bolt. You can use the smaller one, but if you can ask Ollie or Tricia for a Manfrotto 504 head with a plate with a big bolt, it's safer. And what we want to do is we're going to put this in the rearmost hole here because we want the weight distribution to be correct, which means we want to put this towards the back. This will all make sense when we put all the rest of the weight and the lenses on. So I'm just going to engage this into here. Again, sliding this as far back as we can get. And once again, we use a screwdriver, or you can use a coin for this one. Okay, get that nice and tight. We don't want that swiveling around in the middle of a shot. Lovely. Okay, and that's ready to go on the tripod. Great, let's slide the camera onto the tripod. We're using a Manfrotto 504. We don't want anything smaller than that because this is the best tripod for the job. You might notice that I've done this whole operation so far with the body cap on. It makes the camera a lot lighter. It's a lot easier to put it into the cage, particularly when you're working upside down if you've not got a heavy lens on. Also, there's less chance of actually scratching the lens and damaging it in case something goes wrong. Okay, so let's go and get the follow focus and put that on now. Okay, so here's our follow focus. See, we've got teeth on it here. These are going to mesh perfectly with the ring on the lens, and we've got our nice little turning knob, and we've got a ring here that we can replace if this one gets too dirty over the years. Okay, so we put this on the right hand side of the camera. Just always start with the right hand side. It's the accepted side to use. Also we've got these little spring clips in here, so we just want to press this down, clip it on. That's ready to go. When we're ready, we can tighten it up on this little knob here, okay? And we can also set it left and right with this little knob down there, okay? I'm going to just keep this out of the way for now, and I'm just going to go and get a lens to put on the camera. The Canon C100 Mark II has an interchangeable EF mount, which means that we can change lenses. We don't have to use the zoom lens, we can use prime lenses. Let's have a look at our Samyang lens kit. We've got 2 of these on campus, and inside we have got 5 lenses. We've got a 14mm, which is a very wide lens, 24, which is still wide, 35mm, which is heading towards being a standard on the 35mm sensor, 50mm, very nice portrait lens, 85, again, very nice portrait lens. You will see that all the lenses, apart from the 14mm, are T1.5. That means that is the T-stop. F-stops in the photographic world, T-stops in the film world. This makes them very fast lenses. The only issue with these lenses themselves is that because they're not very expensive, they are a little bit soft on the wider end. So really you need to close down at least a stop or two. I would shoot at about 2.8 on these and they'll look grand. Okay, there is something that I need to tell you about these lens cases, is that it's very, very tempting to take a lens out, leave the box open, and then carry on and shoot your film. The trouble is that somebody's either going to spill a cup of coffee on here, or an energy drink, or even worse, somebody's going to kick this box off the table and all of the lenses are going to go scattering. So whenever you have taken one lens out of the box, close the lid and put one latch down. The other latch can remain open. Everybody knows that something is out of the box. If we can close it up, everything should be back in the box. But the main thing is always one latch is always on. I've got an 85mm lens here, so let's go and take the body cap off. Mark, would you like that for me, please? Okay, going to line up our little red dot there. We've got a little red dot in there. The camera is off. We don't have the camera on whilst we do this because the electrostatic charge will jump a load of dust onto the sensor. So we don't want that to happen at all. Okay, now we're going to slide the follow focus up and line that up. Slide that all the way to the back, then push in gently just to engage the teeth. You don't want to press against the lens too much. Have a little test. Is that working? That's lovely. Let's lock the bottom nut off there. Okay. Not too much because you're going to have to take that off whenever you change the lens. And then just tighten this one up just a little bit as well. Have another check. Absolutely fine. Let's go and put a matte box on. Okay, so here's our matte box, and we have got these little fittings down here. These are the same distance as these rails. You've got to catch this side. This needs to be up to loosen it. So I'm going to put this onto the rails from the front and then slide this in. Now I'm going to slide this back so it's just level with the lens but not touching the focus pull. Okay, and then I lock this down. Now, if we were using filters or glass in here, like NDs or polarizers or soft filters, we would need to put a donut in. This would stop light coming from the back, bouncing on the back of the filters. But because we don't need NDs, because the camera has got its own NDs, and the university actually doesn't have any soft focus filters or polarizers for now, we don't need a donut. So you just need to line this up. The reason that we're using a matte box is that we can then control the amount of light that's not in shot from getting in the lens. Now, some people like having flare. It looks very nice sometimes, but sometimes it's a bit of a giveaway if you've got a backlight or a top light, which you otherwise wouldn't use in a scene. So it's a really good idea. It also just helps with the sun sometimes. So we've got this top flag here. You would normally just line these up so they're just out of shot, and the same with the bottom flag here. We will put on here a much bigger top flag, and that's used as well, that will keep the sun out. I'll just get the top flag. It's just tighten up like this. So there's your top flag, which you can use to keep the sun out. Sometimes if it's spotting with rain, it's really good, it'll keep that out as well. So now we've got the follow focus on, let's use it to set up a focus pull between Tricia here and Mark's little Buddha machine. Okay, so I'm going to use the 7 button on the Canon, push in, nice close up of Tricia, then I'm going to set my focus there, happy with that. Tricia's holding a board up. If you've got the opportunity, just makes life a little bit easier, or you can focus on their eyes. I'm going to set my mark here, thank you. Then I'm then going to zoom back out, find the Buddha machine. I'm going to just use the little joystick here to get onto it. Set my sharps there, okay, got that. Then I can put my other mark there. So now I've got my 2 marks. I can come back out, I can set record, and then I can pull between the 2 depending on what the action is. Nice and smooth. So if you've got 2 or 3 people on the camera crew, your operator might be needing to follow a shot. So often it's better for a focus puller to do this. Let's go and change the lens here. So first thing we want to do is we pull the matte box and we just slide that out of the way. We don't need to take that off. Same with the follow focus, we just need to slide this out. I'm now going to turn the camera off because we don't want the sensor to be on because then we get dust. I'm going to release the lens and Mark here is ready to take the lens from me. I'm going to cover the sensor with my hand. I'm going to give Mark the lens. Thank you very much. I'm going to wait here patiently and wait for the new lens. Mark's going to pass that to me. Okay. I'm going to make sure that my little red dots line up. Bingo. Turn the camera back on. Push the follow focus in. Have a little wiggle. Push the matte box in to line up. Voila. This is our Atomos Ninja Blade recorder. We can use this to record ProRes directly from the Canon C100, but also at a much higher bit rate, which means it'll give us better grading possibilities. Let's have a look what's inside. So we've got the recorder itself, we've got an SSD card that goes inside, we've got a caddy for downloading the footage from the SSD card later on, we've got a little flexible magic arm here to connect it to the camera, we've got a couple of batteries for if you can't get to a main supply, we've got a HDMI cable for connecting to the camera, so we've got our main supply here and our battery charger and our little plug sockets to connect them to the wall. To attach the Ninja recorder to the top of the cage, we're going to use a flexible magic arm which comes in the recorder case. I like to use this hole here because it gives us space to position the recorder properly. So let's put this in here. I find if you actually have the magic arm quite sort of stiff, upright, then it's really easy to screw in like this. And then when we get to the bottom, where that bites, then we then secure it with this disc here. Then we're ready to actually place the recorder on top of the magic arm. So now I'm going to stick the Ninja recorder on top of the magic arm. I'm actually going to put it on upside down here because that's helpful for later. I screw this on like this. You might notice there's not a battery on at the moment. I find it easier not to have the battery because it gets a bit heavy actually. It's easier to maneuver it without the battery. So I've got that locked on nice and tight. The magic arm at the moment is still tight, but I'm going to loosen the magic arm like this, and then I'm going to position this onto the cage like that. Okay, I'm leaving a bit of space, which we'll look at from the other angle, so you can see how I can get the battery on, but I'm resting it on the cage here because it's actually going to end up being quite heavy in the end and you don't want to just leave all that weight for the magic arm. Okay, that's nice and tight. Let's turn around and put the battery on. So see how I've got plenty of room here to put the battery in by putting the recorder towards the front of the cage. Okay, we've got the battery release button for later on, and connectors are down here, and so we're going to put a Sony MP970 battery or a copy. That clicks in there, that's lovely. And then let's just pan this around here. Okay. So next to where the SSD drive goes in, we have got the HDMI in slot and the HDMI out slot. HDMI is for us now, and the out is for a director's monitor. So let's go and just plug this in. Pop this in like this. Great. And then let's just turn it around and turn it on. The on button's on the side. Just give it a good assertive squeeze and then wait. So let's press the menu, and we're going to come down to video setup. We go over to HDMI, make sure that is normal, make sure that the LUT is off, because we don't want to apply a LUT to our recording at all. So that's off, and let's go back. Then we have got record command. This is important. This needs to be on. This is so our trigger will work, and we've got to make sure time code on is on as well. And then that is ready to go. And then everything else will work with the Ninja. So now we've got the Ninja Blade and the camera talking to each other. We should have a display like this. If you can't see this, just tap it, because we can clear the display. Sometimes when we shoot a scene, we actually want a clear look. Tap that back on. So starting at the top, we have got 1080p 25. This is what we need to be. You could be recording interlace, but you wouldn't really be if the camera's set up 25. So let's put this back. Then going along the top, we've got ProRes here. We have got the option of recording in DNX HD. We only really want to do this if we are shooting specifically for Avid, but we're not. So let's go cancel. ProRes is perfect for Premiere. Next, we've got our recording settings. We've got 422, which is your standard. We could have LT, that's a lower quality, I wouldn't bother with that. And then you've got HQ if you think that you really want this for the big screen, or maybe for green screen. Let's go back to 422. Let's see, moving on here. We can format by pressing this. Media, format, HDD, SSD, we can format there. We can press that to format, or we just go back like this. Okay. Then moving to the bottom, we have got our record setting. We can press this. Can you see now we've got a red line around? That means that we're definitely recording. We can stop that. We can play the shot back, press play, and we can find a shot. Okay. So we just choose this one. There's our shot. Okay. Press stop, go back to home button, house, to get back to our recording setup. Okay, we've got a menu in here. What we need to do is just to make sure everything's okay, go to time code, and we've got to make sure this that says camera trigger says HDMI. It could be something else, okay? Make sure that's HDMI, then it will fire. Source HDMI, again, could be something else, but we're just going to go back to HDMI, okay? Let's go back to home. Now at the top here, we have got our focus and our exposure assists here. If I press this little blue one, we've got the scopes, and then we can choose whether to have our histogram on the bottom there, our parade, or our vector scope, okay? Remember, your camera operator or director of photography could or should be using the exposure controls on the camera, but again, you've got the option of using these here as well if you want to. If we move down here, we have got our peaking. Let's get a little bit of focus on the camera. Okay, that's nice and sharp. here. Now if I turn this on, you see, and then go to settings, we have got, I can select the color. Can you see the color changing there on the peaking? And I find it quite handy if you go to black and white and go to a nice bright color here, everything goes black and white on the set, but the only thing that's in color is the actual focus peaking, like that. Okay, that's quite handy. Then we could then go down to our zebras, let's turn the peaking off. And then if we were actually brighter, we could actually get our zebra panels, but I think we're wide open as it is here, okay? Then we have false color. This corresponds with the colors on the sides. That's a whole nother tutorial. I think you need to look at that one. I can't explain that here. And then let's go back to home. Let's turn that off. Turn the false color back off so we can see what we're doing. Back to home. When you finish filming, you need to get your footage off the Ninja Blade. This is stored on the SSD card here. Now we can just pull this straight out, okay, and then these contacts here slide on to this little caddy, which is included in the case. So plug that into there, that's engaged. Then, like any other drive, we can then plug this into your computer. And then this then can be treated like any other drive, and we can open it up and we can drag the shots off. So here I've got the black ultra cage and some handles. So I've got a decent handheld setup here. I've got the zoom lens on as well. Don't really want to be messing around with primes if you're doing some kind of documentary or fly on the wall or sort of action movie. So you might notice I've got this handle at the front is almost centered. I've got this underneath the lens. This helps with the balance. There's less chance of me doing that. If I was using this handle, it's going to come down. So with my right hand here, I can now get my left hand on the focus and my left hand on the back zoom ring here. An alternative way of holding this, if I come round, is I can put my hand in there, and then I've got the fire button, but I've also got my finger on the iris as well if I want to control that. Okay, that's it really.